Hello, and welcome to Grey.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Kristin Eberhardt, Director of Climate and Democracy at Sightline Institute, a nonpartisan think tank for sustainability, strong communities, a just green economy, and a healthy environment. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about an organization that is building sustainability at the intersection of environmental health and social justice. Hello, Kristin. Welcome to Grey.com Talks With. We're excited to have you here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Could you please describe Sightline Institute for someone who is not familiar with your work?
Sightline is a regional think tank. So probably people are familiar with think tanks. We work on policy and do research to figure out where policies have worked, what the best solutions are, and to get that information to decision makers. But Sightline is a little unique in being regional. So in the United States, most think tanks are national. They're based in DC or New York, and they focus a lot on national policy, or there's also international think tanks. We focus really in one region of North America. So it's the bioregion of Cascadia. It's defined by a watershed and a type of ecosystem. And that means that we work in the states of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Montana, Alaska, and then also in a Canadian province of British Columbia. So we're crossing international boundaries, but at the same time staying within our eco-region.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful that you mentioned that most of our organizations focused on national level, yet your organization is focusing directly on Pacific Northwest region because it's very rich in resources, and you want to utilize that. And with you being a think tank, you want to create policies that will enable it to run sustainably as a green economy.
Yeah, so our mission is to make the Northwest a global model of sustainability. So strong communities, a green economy, and a healthy environment. And we feel like this region really has the potential to be a leader on those and to sort of forge a path that other places can then see how these policies can really work to make it a better place to live.
What makes Pacific Northwest different from other regions?
Well, the Pacific Northwest is definitely a beautiful and special region. We have oceans and mountains and a lot of very wet, almost rainforest areas, as well as some drier and farmland areas. So it's a great place to live and a great place to show how people can really be in concert with the environment.
Mm-hmm. Living in a peace with the environment and appreciating what it has to offer is something wonderful. And you and most of the residents of Northwest realizing that and working towards that is a beautiful thing. One of also, besides being environmentally friendly, your organization wants to create a just society. Could you please describe on that how Pacific Northwest is building a model of a just society?
Yeah, so in the United States, we have a long history of injustice and of treating some people as less than others, of enslaving African Americans, of pushing Native people out of their land. And we're now hopefully getting to a point where we're seeing that history for the damage that it did, not just to the people who were, enslaved or pushed out or otherwise treated badly, but to all of us for living in a society that can be so unfair to anyone. It hurts all of us. So we are trying to work on policies that can, while creating a more sustainable economy, that to be sustainable, that has to be an economy that includes everyone and gives everyone opportunity and treats everyone like people. And that includes trying to make up for some of these past injustices. So to get more specific, one of the areas that we have worked on is climate change policy, where we tried to see how we could not just reduce climate pollution, but make sure that we're also reducing air pollution in the neighborhoods that have historically been more impacted by air pollution than others. And now we can drive some of the investments into communities that have previously maybe been locked out of job markets to actually drive jobs to there. Another area that we work in is housing. Housing in the United States, we have a history of redlining, where we actually just drew lines where we made it harder for people of color to get a house or to have a house that accrued value. And so we think that we can make up for that, or, to try and make it more just by building housing in places where it makes people who have previously had to have long commutes can have better access to their jobs and can have a house that actually accrues value in the way that white people in the United States have long had an advantage in having houses that make money for them over time.
Mm-hmm. The fact you mentioned that two of progress that you have made in terms of housing, and as well as approaching the communities who were not who saw the results of a climate action as a negative, yet today it's being changed to the positive. And the fact that you are addressing that minorities and people who were not giving enough attention in the past, and realizing that and making an effort to building an equal or just societies worth acknowledging. And I applaud your organization for realizing and doing that. You mentioned that Pacific Northwest is rich in terms of water, environmental resources. Could you please describe how is Pacific Northwest is creating a green economy, and why green economy is important in today's world?
Yeah. So the Pacific Northwest, as you mentioned, we have a very resource-rich environment, and so sometimes a resource-heavy economy. So timber and salmon have been in the past two of the big job creators, and the ways that people here have been able to make money. But then we have also now come to a point where we realize that we're now depleting the environment and reaching a point where maybe there will not be enough salmon left because we have exploited them and their environment. So creating a green economy means preserving those rich resources that we have, and while still creating enough jobs for people who live here to be able to thrive. And that's, going back again to our climate policies, looking at ways that we can reduce our pollution while also creating more jobs by making the Pacific Northwest a center for clean energy and producing some of that clean electricity or clean fuels from the region, so that we're kind of shifting from exploiting the salmon and the trees that we were blessed with to actually creating clean energies that will fuel us, and then also create a model for other places to see that this is a possible transition to make.
Mm-hmm. So instead of using the energy resources that are usually on hand, which is like oil and gas and everything, now you are shifting it into building clean and sustainable resources of energy at the same time, while preserving the animal life, like the fish of salmon and others, as an industry, as a species as well, and as a whole. You mentioned that those are the clean economy, the clean resources is one of the spheres and one of the platforms that new jobs are being created. And what are some other industries that Pacific Northwest is providing businesses and other industries to come in and create more employment opportunities for people?
Yeah, we also have we have a lot of farming, but some of that farming is being done in a way that's creating runoff into waterways that then affect more people down the road. Sometimes it's being done in a way that really exploits laborers by they come and spray the pesticides onto the crops, but then that affects the people who are working in the crops. So some of it is just shifting some of those practices. So we're still growing crops, we're still growing food, but doing it in a way that it's actually a good job for workers and not one that is going to poison them. And it's actually good for the community around and not something that is going to affect their water supply. So it's not always bringing in a whole new industry, but actually looking at what we have here and how we can do it better.
I absolutely love the approach that you mentioned, that it's not always building something from the scratch, but it's also just advancing and improving what has already been been done or is being done to a way that is more sustainable, both for people who work in that environment and environment in general. Do policymakers in Pacific Northwest region interested in hearing the ideas that come from your think tank? Are they open for discussion, and do they take into consideration the voices of the people and as well as your organization?
Some are, some aren't. We definitely, we've been around for more than 25 years. So we have, a good reputation and relationships so that a lot of decision makers really trust us. But that doesn't mean that we get everything that we want. And one thing that we're actually working on, in the United States, things are becoming so polarized between urban areas and rural areas. And a lot of our staff live in urban areas. So we live in Seattle, in Portland, in Anchorage, Alaska. And we're realizing that might make us less effective in really understanding and speaking to the issues that people have in other parts of our region. So we're working on trying to have some staff who actually are part of those other, communities in other parts of the region to make sure that we're really just on the ground and understanding where they're coming from, and hoping that then makes us more trusted advocates or advisors to the legislators from those regions too.
Mm-hmm. In a society that is now growing into the more urban lifestyle and urbanization being more and more enhanced into the society each and every day, we must not forget the people who live in non-urban areas, and in order to create a true democracy, you have to hear the voices of both people living in urban and non-urban areas. You recently wrote a piece about becoming democracy, how we can fix the electoral college. Could you please describe in terms of including all of what we have described in terms of creating an environmentally friendly environment, as well as green economy and social just society, how is that incorporated into a true democracy, and how do you see that being implemented in today's society?
Yeah, so the kind of premise of the book is that the United States, at its founding, it was making a big leap from where other countries were at the time, but it still had pretty limited participation or inclusion of people, right? So less than 10% of Americans were even allowed to vote much less, be in positions of power. And so all those voices of the other 90% were being lost. And the things that they were experiencing in their life, that the areas that they lived in, the resources that they were using, none of those were part of the conversation. So the United States has been, generally slowly expanding who is allowed to participate. So we expanded to say African American men could participate, and then white women, and then eventually Asian immigrants who had been excluded. So we've been sort of slowly expanding the conversation. And every time we do, then we get more likely that we will be on a sustainable path, because those people are bringing in the perspective of how their industry, their region, whatever it is, needs to change to become sustainable. So the book is saying, we're not there yet in the United States. We are still excluding some people from voting. We're still excluding some people from representation. And that is making us weaker and making it less likely that we can have a strong, sustainable, vibrant, and just economy. So it goes through 10 solutions. None of them need a constitutional amendment. None of them need a change in the Supreme Court. They're all things that we can do right now that can make sure that we're finally really achieving that vision of saying everybody gets to participate in this democracy, and everybody gets to help influence where we go as a country.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. For you listening, if you would like to read this great book by Kristen, the link to the book where you can access it will be provided in the link in the description, so you can familiarize yourself and learn about those 10 solutions suggested by Kristen that don't have to be constitutionalized, that can be policy changes, but not on a constitutional level. If someone would like to support your organization, Sightline Institute, how can they do that?
You can go to sightline.org. That's sightline.org. And we would be very appreciative for your support.
Wonderful. For you listening, the link to the sightlineinstitute.org website will be provided in the link in the description, so you can familiarize yourself with the great work that Kristen and her team are doing, and how Pacific Northwest is making a step forward into becoming a green economy and a model for other societies to take advice from. Thank you so much, Kristen. It was wonderful to get to know you, and we hope the best for you and Sightline Institute.
Thank you.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press the like and share button, because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this conversation is important, that green economy and taking care of environment and building a just society is something that we need, and it's a true definition of a true democracy. Thank you, and see you in the next episode.